Well, hello everyone. Here to show you right here. I'm talking about for redoing something, and what does it usually mean when we say redoing something? And it sure seems that way to where it's another way of how you want to cause is to where a reset. And so a lot of times it sure seems that way that really that when we do reset something that what are we pretty much doing? Well, what we're really doing is that we're setting the the data back to the original status, right? So it sure seems that way that each time we think about redoing it, the work and the process, and I'll just show everybody here this right here with the photograph right here, and this right here, talk about for the job description right here, talk about possibly need to reset, to redo and reset. So let's just say that if you're going to be working anything, and let's just say that it's pretty much means is to where that you are kind of like having to go back to square one, just making sure everything is okay. But let's just say that on average, though, that if somebody were to say this, to where that just to test your knowledge. So a lot of times it sure seems that way that whenever you do take any source of test, really, that whenever you do take any source of exam, that they're going to be it's kind of like a review though, and like everybody else would even say too, the number of times that you take in any test, and maybe you just test your ability for how strong your mind is. And it seems like to me that's really what it is that whenever we think about that is to test our thinking, and our ability to make it stronger. So it sure seems that way that everybody might even say too that a number of times that you filled out that application, maybe a number of times that you've done something, and the first thing that's really going to come to your mind though is that really I thought I've done this already, or this looks familiar, and so it sure seems that way that everybody else would maybe get mad all the time just because of the fact that if you do wind up having to redo something, and that kind of gets you behind on schedule, and then that gets you behind on other things that you could be doing. But the way I think about it too, though, that each time I think about this, though, is that really that when we think about testing, though, and when we do think about the work in progress, can we really think about the fact about that whenever you think ahead of time that problems and trouble, I'm like, yeah, any technical issues that you had at the very beginning. So let's just say that if a lot of technical, you know, if a lot of technicians out there would even say too that, do you think it would be honest to think as toward it, you go ahead and review those problems, and maybe that, let's just say that if you were to fix a number of those problems, so let's just say that on average I'll just write it down here somewhere to where that if I go ahead and write on here is to where fixing problems, fixing problems fixing problems mean that future issues will no longer exist. So ahead of time, you want to know too that if you were to like anybody may even say too that talk about for future problems, what they mean by that, and then for what would no longer exist. So it's like a lot of times it sure seems that way that if you were to subtract maybe that data from what was I'm like, yeah, what was recorded, what was monitored on top of the data that was collected from before. So a lot of times the way we think about that is knowing about it. It's just like a filter. And so if you were to install a filter on a lot of I'm like, yeah, if you want to kind of call it a filter to where it filters out all the I'm like, yeah, any all the germs and all that. So like, let's just say that if you're trying to fix something, a lot of times it seems like that, yeah. Well, what does it usually mean when we say redoing something? When we redo something, I'm like, well, really possible, need to redo. So when we do reduce something, that we're spending more time. We could maybe be taking it apart, and we could also be spending more time going back to the data that was already collected, and maybe anything that you may have already heard before, anything that you may have already seen before. So a lot of times it sure seems that way, to where it's like kind of like rewind the clocks, But in a lot of ways, it sure seems that way. Which that can be really annoying, but by half the time it's like going back. And so half the time it's like whenever you do go back, whenever you rewind to where that you go back to square one, whenever you have to redo something, are you necessarily making change whenever you do that? And like a lot of technicians would say too, that what you're basically are doing whenever you do that is to where are you necessarily are you making any source of change? Are you changing anything? Are you making any source of change? Or are you just making sure that everything is correct, or anything, any of the data and all that? Yeah. So it's like between right or wrong, right or wrong. So a lot of times it sure seems that way, that if that really is supposed to be any sort of scenario or anything like that. But it sure seems that way, that each time we think about, either cancellation or redoing the work in the process, that pretty much means is to where that the work is not done yet, and like everybody else would say too, that the work is not done yet. There's still more work to do. More work to do. But on the other hand, that when we talk about test, though, a lot of times that it's all about making sure that the things are working properly, and you're making sure that we're fixing a lot of the problems that have been. I'm like, like everybody else may even say too, that do you think that it would make more sense to go ahead and fix the problems now before the matters get worse later on in the near future? Because a lot of technicians would even say too that a lot of those problems may no longer exist. Maybe after a certain time, after you fix this problem, or after you correct this or that in the database, and some of those problems may no longer exist after a certain period of time. So let's just say if we think maybe a year ahead of time or something like that. But like everybody else might even say that whenever you first start working on something, though, it's like, the things that you see then compared to whenever you check back, to it maybe 6 months later or something like that, and they say, we'll do our best and all that, but still, we're talking about right here with with problems, though. So it seems like that one of there could be maybe a tech supporter or somebody that may have wrote like, I can fix that problem, or no problem, I can fix it. But really, how would we respond to about the fact about do you mind redoing this assignment? Like, let's just say if it is a documentation or any source of a data report collected, and I want to know too that if you're asked to redoing something pretty much means that it's kind of like a reset. But another way of how to test just just to see what's going on in the process, just so that way you can have like an overview most of the time. And like a lot of professionals would even say too, that it's called an overview. So when we speak about overviews, though, what is a good example of an overview? The things the expert the things that the experts can see and provide the advice they also mention the things they recommend. So a lot of times it sure seems that way that each time we think about that when we do think about a possible need to redo and reset something, and just to test your knowledge, and at the time you want to know too that really that between right or wrong and an overviews that this is this that the experts can see and provide the advice that they mention on the things that they recommend. So a lot of times it's like, we will do our best if you need to make a copy of something. But a lot of times it sure seems that way that a lot of the problems that we do see in the 102, that how do you really answer to that situation to where that whenever you do have to redo something, and even if you do have to cancel something, I can go ahead and go to that page too, and know about redoing something means that you need to spend more time, and talk about for cancellations right here, different ways of how you can say that. The agendas are reviewed before they arrive to the finals, but I can also mention on here that postponed and canceled only if the correct process is made, or to recap on decisions made. So it sure seems that way that whenever you're going to be working on something, that you may hear that toward it, if something is canceled. What does that usually mean? If it's canceled, and it's like everybody else would even say that is toward it, no longer needed. And if you want to go ahead and maybe put that too. So it sure seems that way that when we talk about that a lot of times.